What's up, guys? Tim Halston with DragBoss Garage. You know what? We're live right here at DragWay 42 with a legend, Charlie Evans. You guys have only heard about him in lore. Now you're going to meet him in face-to-face, and he's going to give us a little bit of cylinder head tech. Now, Charlie was a school teacher. For 31 years, he taught science. Learned to tinker with lawnmowers back in the day like we probably all did. We all hot rodded our parents' lawnmower. And then after he finished his avocation of school, he went on to his passion of cylinder heads and engines and the big black Ford. So he and his, I think your brother's Lem?
No, but we're distant cousins.
Cousins, okay. And you can already tell by his accent, he's from Kentucky. Owensboro, if I'm not mistaken, Charlie. Am I correct?
Yeah. And Lem and I are friends, but we're not even sure we're distant cousins.
Okay.
If we are, it's way back.
Okay. I always thought you were his brothers.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
So what he wants to do is, I'm mostly with small block Fords, Clevelands, you know, not a lot of Windsor stuff, but I've been doing a lot of cylinder head tech. And Charlie's been watching the channel. He's buddies with Darren Morgan. And he said, you know what, Tim? Why don't you come up to DragWay 42 and I'm going to show you a little bit of big block Ford head technology and kind of teach you a little bit. I said, you know what? I can't pass on that offer. I'll see you on Friday. Mrs. DragBoss is here filming with the Bossettes. So we'll let you take the floor, Charlie. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you. So we will go back and start with your small block Ford tech.
Yep.
And this cylinder head is a C3.
Got it.
It has the Cleveland valve cover bolt pattern.
Sure.
It's got the machine stands and takes a
Pedestal type or shaft.
Shaft mounted rocker stand.
Yeah.
So anyway, and this set of heads we've done from scratch. They come in, their support's quite a bit smaller.
Right.
And this is the Robert Yates cylinder head that he designed. There's a picture of him holding the cylinder head, this very cylinder head on the internet, you know, Robert Yates. And it was a NASCAR head that they used for a while.
Yep, I know.
Back in the day. So anyway, this head takes a 2.15 intake valve and a 1/600 exhaust valve, and there is no side cant, so the valves open and close straight up and down. And Darren was talking about side cant induces swirl. And these valves that do not have side cant, what they induce is tumble. So when you talk about flow, you've heard two terms. You've heard the term about swirl of the air fuel mixture in the cylinder.
Sure.
And you've also heard about tumble of the air fuel mixture in the cylinder. And tumble kind of goes from top to bottom and churns. Okay. Like holding a beer mug up and pouring a draft, and you kind of see the foamy bubbles.
Sure.
How it kind of goes that way.
Yep.
So this is a C3 NASCAR base small block Ford.
Now, let me show you this, guys. I'm going to show you now, when you look at these pictures that are going to be in this video, this is the original head that Robert Yates did. And you can see how he welded up all the combustion chambers. You're going to see these pictures right now after he gets started talking. I'm going to add them on here for my buddy Blake Livingston. He has the original Robert Yates head that he started with. It welded everything up.
Yeah.
So check out these pictures.
So, I mean, when these heads come out of the box back in the day, you had to put the guides and seats in.
Right.
So this is kind of interesting. You put the guides in, and I've done other sets of these, and they had like the 7mm stems and the 5/16 stems.
Yep.
And in today's world with the COVID problems, getting 6mm and 7mm stem valves is hard to do. So like I said, I've done others that were 5/16 stem and 7mm stem. This set I just did 11/32 stem. Okay. And then the first thing you do, this set get the ductile iron intake pressed in, and then when you do the Amco 45 or the copper beryllium exhaust seat, it intersects right there at my fingernail. It intersects the intake seat.
I see it right there. You can see it overlapping.
Yeah, you can see it.
Move right in. Mrs. DragBoss, can you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been racing A3 heads, which is the precursor to this for close to 30 years.
And in all the shuffling to bring some heads up here,
Yep.
I just grabbed what I could. I didn't grab everything I had. So the next head we'll talk about is that one right there. If you'll pick that one up for me. That is the Kaase SR-71 head.
Okay.
And this Jon Kaase SR-71 head, when you get them, unless they custom specify the copper beryllium and the AMCO 45 seats, they will be ductile iron seats. You can see the color difference.
Sure.
The copper beryllium
Yep.
is the exhaust. The AMCO 45 is the bronze alloy, whereas this is a copper alloy.
Got it.
And when you machine copper beryllium, it's a carcinogen.
Sure it is.
And you're supposed to wear a respirator because it does cause cancer.
Berylliosis is what it causes.
Okay.
Yep.
So these heads are nice. They come from Kaase with CNC combustion chambers. Always make a point of deburring the spark plug threads that extend into the combustion chamber because it produces a hot spot.
Yep.
These heads, I've started on porting them. I have not finished porting them. I've just started on it. Now the beauty of the Kaase SR-71 head is he's got the combustion chamber centered on top of the cylinder better.
Okay.
Therefore, your valve pierce points are on the cylinder's diameter or the circle's diameter. If your valve pierce points are down on the cord, which is a smaller section,
Okay.
going from one side of the cylinder to the other, or one side of a circle to the other, but not passing through the center, that's defined as a cord. If your valve pierce points are on a cord, like the original OEM Ford stuff was, you cannot put as big a valve in. But if you put your valve pierce points on the diameter of the cylinder, you can put bigger valves in. So the diameter is the greatest distance from one side of the circle to the other,
Sure.
which passes through the center.
Which
So
unshrouds it.
yeah, it
in the
unshrouds
cylinder.
it, yeah. So anyway, 2.375,
Yep.
1.76 for big bore aftermarket blocks, or 1/700 for small bore OEM blocks. Okay, they do downsize the exhaust valve depending on the size of your cylinder bore.
Okay.
And the general rule of thumb is just if it's an OEM block, we're going to do the small exhaust valve. If it's an aftermarket block like the SVO or the Eliminator,
Yep.
we'll do the big valve.
And you're talking NA, naturally aspirated applications.
So anyway, this is SR-71, and the beauty of this head is that Jon extended this distance right here and raised the intake port, which then requires, so we're going to raise the intake manifold, so then it requires this, which we call channel rail spacer.
Sure.
So all SR-71 heads have a raised intake port like a small block Ford head, I think the Glidden head maybe,
Yeah.
and like the SR-20 head, the Chevrolet SR-20 head from Brodex. So we've raised the intake port because it was extended this way, and that necessitated the use of the China oil spacer. Okay? Another thing I really like about this head is the big pads for rocker arm stands and rocker arm bosses. You won't rip a rocker arm boss out of that. Okay?
No flex there.
There's no flex there. So when I found out about this head, I told Cliff, I said, well, send me a set of them. I'd actually ordered the P51 heads, and I didn't even open the P51 heads. I sent them back, and he sent me the SR-71 heads.
Okay.
So I used them on a super gas engine for Presley, Ray, Wilkerson, or Presley, Ray, Baker, and a super gas roadster, NHRA.
Yep.
So now then, she got married and she became pregnant, so she's on maternity leave. She's got one baby and there's another one on the way. And so she said, take the engine out of my super gas roadster and you can put it in that red Mustang over there. So honest to God, that red Mustang over there has her super gas engine, which has SR-71 heads.
Okay.
So that's like we've taken the knife to a gunfight and we're still doing good. These things make more power than what you think they do.
Did Darren have anything to do with the?
Not with this head, no.
Okay.
Part of the secret to this head is the bowls are deeper,
Yep.
intake and exhaust. and it gives us bigger bowl volume. See, that's pretty big.
Oh yeah, that is.
That's deep. It gives us pretty big volume, and it helps the airflow. So the airflow on a ported set of these is 472, 475 CFM on the intake, and 270, 275 on the exhaust. That's a wacky EI ratio, exhaust to intake ratio, but they still run good, and they make big horsepower. And on Jon's dyno, I made 1,138 horsepower with a 611 and a single 4-barrel.
Well, I got you beat. My head's far less than that.
with that SR-71. So anyway, it's a good head.
Now let me ask you this. When I was looking on, I think it was your website, they had like a spacer that you had put on the exhaust. Do you know what is that just for a header adapter?
That's a header adapter.
Or is that to extend the port?
No, it's to put a Chevrolet header on it. That's what's on the red car.
Okay.
So that's an adapter.
Yep.
That goes from the Ford pattern to the Chevrolet, big block Chevrolet pattern, unless you put a Chevrolet header on it.
Got it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So I think we'll skip over this one for a minute.
Okay.
We can talk about this one. This is the head Darin Morgan designed.
Okay, yeah, he used to work for ProFiler one time.
Yes, so this is the head Darin Morgan designed. Like I said, Darin's a friend of mine. It's a beautiful head. It is based on the Ford C460.
Yep.
The Ford C460 has a real rectangular intake port. This has the oval shape intake port, and the oval shape helps reduce the dead air space in the corners. Okay, so that's one advantage. Okay. This head has 4 degrees of side cant, which Darin was talking about being a good wedge head, and it's got the valves rotated a little bit. If you took a straight line down the intakes, and then we come over here and we got a straight line down the exhaust, you kind of see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So the valves are kind of like, that's what you call the rotation. Okay. Is that the exhaust being closer to the exhaust side of the head and the intake being closer to the intake side of the head. This head's a 10-bolt head pattern, 9/16 head bolts. Additionally, it has 8 more head bolts here, 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 and here. Those are 7/16. Additional studs for clamping force. And a lot of people don't know this. This is not perpendicular. It lays out at a 7.5 degree angle.
Splayed somewhat.
Yes, and it fits the lugs on the aftermarket 18-bolt blocks.
Like what, eliminator blocks?
Eliminator block or Ford A440.
Got it.
And the block that they've been saying for 4 years they're going to come out with, X460, will be an 18-bolt block. So you've got an 18-bolt head here, whereas that was a 10-bolt head there. So the 10 bolts are the 11/16. And what makes it an 18-bolt are these extra 7/16 right here that are important too. Okay. Now that's your dowel pin hole.
Yeah.
So these seats are MCO 45. Notice they're yellow color.
Right.
And again, you put your intake seat in first, and then your exhaust seat goes in. It intersects a little bit with the intake seat, so it merges into it. So this is ProFiler 221. Okay. This is not a Chevrolet bolt pattern. This is what we call the Pro Stock bolt pattern.
Okay.
It is the same as a DRCE Oldsmobile. Yep. It's the same as the Thor. Yep. It is the same as the C460 Ford, the D460 Ford, or the E460 Ford. So it takes a one-piece rocker stand, and that bar can go all the way down through there, Jessel, T&D. The other thing, and I even brought them, I don't know what I did with them, but we machined this for a flat spot and a counter bore to put in B&B step-shouldered washers. Yep. So they're step-shouldered, and the purpose on that, and where they're machined in there too, if you look, you can see that's machined. These heads torque 135, 140 pounds. Wow. And it will krill the aluminum in just a little, so that the step-shouldered washer is recommended by Ford. There's 4 pages of instructions for the C460 head, and in it they mention step shoulder washers from B&B, which is now owned by Steps. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we did 11/32 stem. Typically, this head takes a 2,450 intake valve and a 1,850 exhaust valve, and typically these heads will take a 50 or 55 degree seat out. Okay, and this was from when Darren Morgan worked at ProFiler. Okay, okay.
It's just a serious looking head. I mean, look at that.
It is,
Can
and
you
I
zoom in on
run
that?
2 sets of them on my own engine, or on my own engines.
You can see that good.
Oh, the other thing is, notice that it breaks through the headbolt boss on all of them. On
Yeah,
the
right
exhaust.
through here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's common.
Yep.
That's common. You can turn the head upside down so she can take a picture of it.
I have it on my own heads the same way.
Breaks through the headbolt boss on the exhaust.
Because you're moving that port over that far. Let's look at this. Get a good picture of that. This is DragBoss. Look at that. It's just crazy. And I can see that air going through there in my head when I look at stuff like that. Nice. So what we didn't talk about in this particular video is the Kaase P51 big black Ford cylinder head. Here's some pictures of it and some specs, because we've included this in another video which will be coming online. It's exclusive for DragBoss Garage. That's all I'm going to say. Then you got a hemi over here.
All right, well, let me grab this one here.
Or a camera or something. What is it?
It's a hemi. Now this
Yep.
is a Ford head. Tim, this, you and Darren Morgan have been talking about the original
JC.
Boss 429.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You've been talking about the next version. Darren Morgan's been talking about the weeks that he would weld Bob Glidden's Boss 429
DragBoss
stuff.
Tim.
Then the upgrade from that
Oh,
was the
that
AR
not-
head, cast Allen root.
Yep.
So the AR head from Allen root is a full hemi combustion chamber.
Okay.
Carol Carter was selling that head and still sells it today at CNC Motorsports. Okay, the next version of this head was designed by Tom Roberts at Roberts Design. This then is called the B441 head. The B, see the B441?
Yeah.
See the Ford logo?
Yeah.
No, we'll be out here in another 15 minutes. Is that okay? And so anyway, it was sold through, and it had the valve bolt pattern, the cover pattern is different.
Yep.
You can always tell it's got 2 bolts on the end,
Okay.
where the A and the Boss have 1 bolt on each end.
Got
Okay.
it. Got it.
So anyway, this was the next generation above the A441, and it's the B441, and it's a bigger head. And there were 3 versions of it. The 3 versions were an NHRA Pro Stock version several years ago, which tended to have lower intake ports. It was on 4,900 bore spacing.
Okay.
The next version was the IHRA tall dash block, which had the raised intake port. So this is a 4,900 bore spacing, and it's got the higher intake. And the exhaust, we'll flip it over, and you can see the exhaust right there. Of course, that's a big breathing exhaust. The other thing, let me flip this around. Remember a while ago I told you that A441 heads were a full hemi chamber?
Yes.
Okay, the B441 head is also called a hemi, but it's not a full hemi chamber. It's sort of like a hemi chamber around the intake valve and a hemi chamber around the exhaust valve. It's sort of like having a big tennis ball here and a small tennis ball here and squishing them together.
Okay.
So you wind up with a figure 8 shaped chamber. You with me?
Yep.
Figure 8 shape. And a small tennis ball squished into a bigger tennis ball. It kind of makes this figure 8 shaped chamber. Okay, so this is a figure 8 shaped chamber, and it makes a really good naturally aspirated head for Kase's 812, 820 cubic inch pro stock engines. That A441, I've got a set of those heads. I got a set at home, but I used a set of those on my blower motor. They make a better combustion chamber for a blown engine application.
This is what Darren told me. He said the problem with the Hemi is you can't get any compression out. You know, you can only go so far. Here's your answer. This is why you probably can get 15 or 16 to 1 in this, because of the smaller combustion chamber.
So,
right?
You're right. You're right, and you're right. And this, he also talked about cross flow. Well, you can see how the intake comes in, comes out, and you see how the exhaust. I mean, it crosses right over the exhaust. He explained that when he was talking to you about the A441 Hemi. So this has a lot of cross flow. This has a lot of scavenging with the camshaft during the overlap period.
Right.
A proper cam for the Hemi would have less overlap because mechanically it scavenges so much that you could reduce the amount of overlap. Probably a different camshaft based on application.
I'll give you an idea. Are we talking like, you know, 115, 118?
Oh, he mentioned 118, I think, and yeah, you could do 118.
Okay.
Definitely 116, 118.
Got it.
So anyway, these heads also have different oil drain back holes than the wedge heads. These heads right here are a 10-volt version. There's now, I think, an 18-volt version of these. See the lug that's here, here, and here, and here corresponds with.
Sure.
Okay. So if you look at these heads, if you look in the red area, tell me what the problem is. What I outlined in red magic marker.
I mean, this quench. What do you ask me?
Can you see where all the pistons were hitting the combustion chamber?
Want to know the truth?
Like
Not-
right here, man?
Not without my
Right here.
glasses on.
See,
Oh, yeah, now I can see where it's.
see where the pistons were hitting combustion chamber? And so, I mean, the owner sent these heads for me to rework, but they've all been smacking, and it's probably due to running a 40,000 head gasket, and he needed to run a 60,000 head gasket. But the pistons have physically been smacking the combustion chamber in this area that I highlighted in red. Okay, owner's a good friend of mine. I mean, they're great racers, but anyway, they just had a little problem there. It was probably growth of the aluminum rod due to thermal expansion, coefficient of linear expansion, or head gasket thickness.
Now you want it as close as you can get it, though, don't you?
Well, yeah, you want it under 38 thousandths if you're looking to reduce the quench.
Yep.
Now, if you're running nitrous, you soften the chamber. So this, from here to here, has been modified. This is what we call a soft chamber. Okay. Notice that it's not flat like here and here. You follow me?
Yep.
So to soften the chamber, that has not been softened. That hadn't been softened. Neither of those have been softened. But this chamber has been softened, and you see it on both sides right here, and that's about a 7.5 degree angle.
Now is that reducing detonation?
Well, yes, it does.
Okay.
And it kind of works. You mentioned quench a while ago. Well, this kind of works in the opposite effect. When you got nitrous, you want to go on and get that nitrous burnt. Okay.
Right.
So anyway, this company was sold, the Ford heads designed by Tom Roberts of Roberts Design. They were sold out of North Carolina through a company called RDI, which was Race Parts Distribution.
Sure.
When Race Parts Distribution went belly up and went out of business, Ford asked Jon if he wanted to sell the head. Jon said, not exactly. He said, why don't you try Carroll Carter? And Carroll took it on, even though he sold the A441. He now sells the B441. Of course, we know that Carroll's passed away. His son, Chris Carter, and Margaret Klein and Bill Klein, they're doing a fine job of running the business in Manassas, Virginia. They sell the B441 head, and they sell the A441 head. You need to know the proper application.
Their company is?
CNC Motorsports.
There it is, CNC Motorsports. Boys.
Now there's one other version of this head. The third version, I got to talking about high ports.
Yeah.
This version's on 4900, and the other version is sometimes referred to as the C441, but it's a 5-inch bore spacing. So we got to think about the 5-inch bore spacing stuff for the 812, 820 cubic inch engines. Okay. So the C441 version or the third version of the B is for the 5-inch bore spacing. All right. I don't know too much about
right
it. It's
there
a
is
bronze alloy. It's
Ford
called
Big Block
Enco 45.
The cylinder head's
Bronze
101
alloy.
by Charlie Evans.
Is that
A
cast
great
with
explanation.
a head, or is that pressed in?
Oh, that's
I
pressed
really
in
know
there. Yeah.
minimal about Big Block
Pressed in
Ford
there.
heads.
And like this head has ductile iron seats pressed in.
Has what?
Ductile, D-U-C-T-I-L-E, iron oil. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
What's the advantage of beryllium versus brass bronze seats? You know, they say beryllium is much more durable.
No, it depends on their ability to conduct heat.
Okay.
So copper beryllium is the better heat conductor. And the purpose of the copper beryllium is to, the brief amount of time that the valve is on the seat,
Yep.
we want to pull heat out of the valve
Got it.
and into the seat, which in turn passes it into the head, which in turn passes it into the water jacket.
Yeah.
So it's a transfer of heat from the valve to a copper beryllium seat, which is a great conductor, to the aluminum head, to the water jacket.
Durability wise though, how many valve jobs would you have or duration or frequency from one to the other? If you're running the brass type seats, are you going to have a valve job, you know, every 20 runs versus with copper beryllium you might get 60? Is there some kind of ratio or longevity period between the two materials?
Not particularly between the copper beryllium and the brass.
Okay.
The ductile iron valve seats will last longer. Those are more friendly to titanium.
Got it.
As a general rule of thumb, if we're running a titanium valve,
Yep.
we either need to coat the titanium valve with a DLC coating like what Victory does, which stands for diamond like carbon.
Yep.
Coat the seat surface, okay? Or run the softer seats, which copper beryllium and bronze are, okay?
Okay.
But the titanium valve on a ductile iron seat will run pretty fast. You quadruple the life of a titanium valve by using it on a copper beryllium seat or a bronze Enco 45 bronze seat.
Okay.
And you will quadruple the life of the titanium valve if you have them coated. Now, once they're coated, it's an expensive process. It's like $38 per valve. But what I do, if I need to lap a seat, I'll lap it with a stainless steel valve just to lap with, because if you lap with that titanium valve that's been coated, you'll knock that coating right off of it. And you've just wasted $38 per valve.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay.
So anyway, if you run a titanium valve on ductile iron seats, general rule of thumb is pay the extra $38 per valve, or 40 or 45, whomever, and get it coated. Typical coatings are chromium nitride, titanium nitrate, and DLC for diamond-like carbon. Okay, and if you're running the copper beryllium and the Enco 45 bronze, you don't have to worry about it. Okay.
Nice.
All right.
Thanks for that. Good clarification. Thank you.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Is the press fit the same between the brass and the ductile iron?
Yeah, generally 6 thousandths per seat. Yes, sir.
Good question. Say hi to everybody on DragBoss Garage.
Hi.
I appreciate
Hi.
you taking the time.
Let's end this tape and start another.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, my friend.
What was the name?
The name was DragBoss Garage. Thank you, Mrs. DragBoss and the Boss Sets for the help. Thank you, Charlie Evans from Evans Racing Engines. I appreciate everything you shared with myself and the subscribers. Always seeing and learning something new at DragBoss Garage.